Welcome to Air Check Your Life. So today we're going to be talking about composure under pressure. And my guest is Sam Osborne, a speaker and a leadership advisor who works with people whose daily jobs run on conflict, like litigators, executive, and high stakes boards. So Sam, welcome to the show. You tout a repeatable method to stay composed when people get under your skin. So we're going to start with two questions. Number one, why do people get under our skin? And number two, what is this method that you can teach us today so that we can do better in those situations?
Yeah. People get under our skin because of our values hierarchy. Everyone has a list of values of what is most important to least important. And if you perceive an individual to challenge your highest values, they will get under your skin. If you perceive an individual to support your highest values, you'll like them instead. So people who get under skin, it all comes down to what you value and whether that person challenges you or supports your values. And the method is the DeMartini method. And it is a method I've been trained in by Dr. John DeMartini. He has been developing this for the last 50 years, and I've been trained by him, and I continue to train with him. It is the cutting edge of personal development tools on the planet right now.
Okay, so let's work this out, man. And if you don't mind, I wanna kind of challenge you a little bit. And I'm gonna say, what are some values that somebody could hit and ding for you? So if somebody's gonna come at you and they're gonna get under your skin, what sort of stuff gets under your skin?
The thing that gets under my skin the most is probably people who are late for appointments and meetings. And because I value my time and I want to respect other people's time as well, but not everybody values time in the same amount. So, you know, if they're late, they don't see it as much as a problem as me. Okay, so that's one classic example. It might be people who have their speakerphone on really loud in public spaces. That kind of gets to me. I'm going through therapy for these things, but
I need to as well.
Yeah.
What does this Dr. Martini, what does he teach you, or what have you learned from him that our audience could pick up on so that we could maybe not, pull the knife out and stab them 12 times?
Okay. So whatever gets under your skin, interpret it as feedback of a part of you that you have disowned. And conflict and challenge and people getting under your skin is not going away. The world, if you try to get rid of half of the world, that's unrealistic. You can't get rid of conflict and you can't get rid of the people that you don't like. So we have to focus on how can I restore self-governance, and I guess you could call it emotional intelligence, but I like to think of it really as perception mechanics or perception management. So we can't change other people, but we can adjust our perception of what is happening out there. And that is empowering if you know how to do it. And I'm happy to explain to you, the method in a nutshell. Essentially, you take the specific behavioral trait or action or the inaction, the thing they didn't do. You take that very specific thing and the very specific individual, and you bring up an episodic memory of when you have seen it happen. You identify that, you identify the specific trait, and you ask yourself, when and where have I perceived myself to have displayed or demonstrated the exact same or similar trait, action, or inaction to the same degree, qualitatively or quantitatively, in all areas of your life, across all 7 areas of your life, until you can state with certainty that you have perceived yourself to have demonstrated the same as the individual that you're currently getting frustrated with. That will bring your pride down and bring them out of the resentment pit. That's the first step.
So to use your time example, Sam, it would be like, okay, I remember a time when I was late. And I remember walking in and, not being on time. And, look, I had a rough morning that morning. I had something happen. I didn't mean to be late, but I just was late. Am I on the same train with you? Is that like that's kind of what you're talking about? If I'm not, please correct me.
First of all, emotions come in sort of ratios. Like it could be a 1 out of 10 and it's not really much of a problem for you. A 5 out of 10 is going to start to make you annoyed. And then a 10 out of 10 is you think that individual is really getting under your skin. So
Hmm.
if it's just something small, then I mean, you can still neutralize the charge, the emotional charge, but it's often better to go for something that is truly, like a 10, a 9, an 8, or a 7 out of 10 to really get the biggest bang for your buck from this method. So you choose something that really gets under your skin and you can pinpoint when and where the event occurred and the individual you perceive demonstrating it. So you start there and then you name the trait. Okay, what was it that you perceive them to have demonstrated? You can't say a label. You can't say how they made you feel. You can't give a broad or vague generalization. It has to be a observable, physical, structural, or functional behavioral trait. That way you remove the emotional story in the drama that your amygdala is recycling and exaggerating, because that's how that part of the brain works, so that you take action. Fortunately, we now have the pre-medial frontal cortex here, which gives us the ability to sort of have objectivity and reflect rather than just react. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm wondering if you could take us a step further. I mean, I know you're a speaker and this is kind of your bread and butter is to help people understand this more. Is there a story that you share from the stage that kind of brings this home, that articulates that?
Yeah. So many years ago, I was working as a kitchen bathroom ceramic tiler, and I was working in a new home and I was preparing the floor, and I had to remove these pieces of wood out of a door frame that had been set overnight. Normally, you can pull these things out quite easily, but one particular wood piece was really stuck in there. So I took a hammer and a chisel and tapped it, didn't remove it. So I hit it quite hard. As a result, a tiny piece of metal broke off the chisel and tore through my left eye and pierced the retina. Literally, something got under my skin in a very painful and disruptive way. So
Wow.
from there, I had operation. My eyesight has been restored fairly well, considering that the piece of metal missed the optic nerve by a few millimeters, which was confirmed with an X-ray. But it was the years after that caused a whole lot of pain, and I saw a lot of medical specialists, and they were saying, we don't know why your eye is not entirely healing. Like it was inflamed most of the time, and they put me on some serious medication to reduce the inflammation. So I started looking into what am I not looking at here, and how can I, in a way, help heal myself? What can I do? And it really started this journey of looking into perception and how what we look at can change the way we look at it. That's where it started.
So it's all coming together now. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, I firmly believe this. I think, anybody who's doing the work that you're doing, the work that I do, we do it because we needed it first, right? There was some personal part of this thing where we had to do the work on ourselves. And then we triggered something in a good way where it's like, okay, now I need to give this to other people. I wanted to ask you a couple of pointed questions, which is, you've spent 25 years studying this stuff, why capable, brilliant people lose the room. When people look back at a meeting or an argument where they lost their composure, is there one or is there two typical root causes for that?
Yeah, the first thing is that people have, like I said before, because people have a set of values, and if one of those gets challenged, you don't like that person, and or you despise that person, or you might even hate them, that is feedback that there is a part of you that you've disowned and disassociated from, and that individual is triggering you as feedback that you are guilty and shameful of when and where you have perceived yourself to have demonstrated the same or similar. Now, that then allows us to revisit those very specific moments and look how those individuals that you perceived yourself to have demonstrated it to have equally benefited to balance the scales, because you've got an unconscious guilt or shame of when you've done it. So if you revisit them and say, well, how did those individuals benefit from when I demonstrated it? So that's 50-50. You're not getting rid of the negatives that you would have perceived that you've created, but you're now stacking positives. And nothing in this world comes in a one-sided package. It's always a balance if you take the time to look. So when you neutralize the precise moments where you've perceived yourself to have done the thing that you're judging in this guy or gal over here, it does this collapse. You bring yourself out of the pit, and then you have this guy or gal over here comes out of the pit. You have a new profound appreciation that they came into your life, and you can say thank you rather than F you.
Thank you over F you.
It's a profound experience to have an equilibrated mindset rather than try to live a one-sided fantasy about who people should be and who you should be. This brings you back to true authenticity. And I know a lot of people talk about be your authentic self. This is a method to have a physiological confirmation of authenticity and balance. When the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system come on in a balanced moment for just that brief moment, you will have an aha moment, if you like, and poise, a pulling on the heartstrings, a tear welling up in the eye. You'll know, you'll have certainty, because you're no longer judging this individual and you're no longer judging yourself, but you have appreciation and gratitude and presence. And this is the profound nature of the DeMartini method.
So in the time that we have left, roughly 5 to 7 minutes here, I wanted to ask you, on your website, you map out a few specific traps that leaders fall into. The one that caught my eye is the admiration trap, where smart people quietly hand over their authority to a stronger personality or someone with more status in the room. And so my question is, how does that show up without us realizing it? And maybe how can we become aware of it? Because if it's a trap, it's likely something we should try to avoid.
Yeah, so this is the opposite of what we've just been talking about, which is people we resent. That's the conflict advantage we were talking about. That's my main program, is how can you use conflict to your advantage with the people you resent or get under your skin. Now we flip it the other way and go, what about the people I look up to? What about the people I admire or maybe infatuate and obsess over and perceive that they have something that I don't? And we put them up, we elevate them, we look up to them. And as a result, due to the law of polarity and conservation, we put ourselves down in a proportionate amount. We reduce our worth in comparison to them. So what we do is we take account of all the people in our life across the 7 areas of life that could be financial, physical, vocational, social, family, spiritual, mental, whatever. You find the top people, let's say top 3 people that you admire, and you identify the specific traits, actions, or inactions that you have perceived them to have demonstrated, and you can say when and where that you admire most. And then, like we did with the people you resent, you now look for where you have demonstrated the same or similar trait, action, or inaction in the person that you're admiring, until you can say with certainty that you have owned that trait that you're infatuating within this person. You'll bring them off the pedestal and you'll bring yourself out of the pit. You will have an equally profound moment of appreciation and love for yourself, because you, prior to that, seeing that you didn't have whatever you saw in them.
I can see where if we have an imbalance of power, so to speak, we won't have effective communication, right?
Yeah, it's an imbalance of perception, or an imbalanced perception that you see
For
they have
sure.
something more than what you do. As a comparison, and as a result, you perceive them to have more power, and you disempower yourself.
I
So
love this.
the idea is to go, where and when have I perceived myself to have demonstrated the same or similar trait, action, inaction in all areas of a life that you're currently dishonoring because you're judging it as not as valuable, because someone along the way has told you that you can only value the way they are valuing it and in the area that they're expressing it. In the form, it might be, well, they do it in business or academia, but somewhere along the way, someone said, well, it's not as valuable if you do it in family or in social circles or in your spirituality. And so we devalue and say, because of the moral hypocrisies of the world, or the moral injection of other people's value systems into our own, and we confuse them with what our true values are.
This is such a valuable conversation because, you were asking me, what do I notice in conversation? And the one thing that I say to a lot of people, Sam, is that everybody shows up to the same conversation differently. And we have to acknowledge that. And for me, one of the things that I'm helping people understand is based on the way, and it's a lot of what you're talking about, based on the way that you came up and the experiences that you had, that's how you're going to show up for this conversation. And you could call it what you did, your values and the things that are important to you. But you also have to remember that so is the other person. Like, this isn't a one-way transmission. They're bringing all of their value systems and all of their stuff to the table as well. And if we can use that emotional intelligence to go, okay, I've like, let's just say somebody gets under your skin quick in a conversation, triggers you and in a way where the old way would say, like, well, now we're going to war. Now we're going to fight each other. Now we're going to go
blame
for
game.
Yeah. It's going to, what I say is, now we're turning it into you versus me. And what I would challenge people to do, and it sounds like you would too, is to remember one thing that I heard years ago that I can't let go of, which is, it's not you versus me, it's you and me versus the problem. And I'm keeping us on the same team, and I'm not going to let this thing that triggered you derail our conversation. Instead, what I would advise in this case is that we get curious and we ask somebody, maybe, hold on a second, I can see that might have tripped you up a little bit or gotten under your skin, as you say. Let's walk that out a little bit, because that wasn't my goal. My goal wasn't to rub you the wrong way, or my goal wasn't to stir up any conflict here.
Yes.
So
we're basically
let's
talking about
understand
mediation.
that.
Yeah, we're
Is that
talking
that's
about,
it.
mediation, and that can be between friends. It can be between business partners, clients. It can be anyone, right? If the two people involved in the conflict really want to resolve it, we apply the method. Say, okay, what does everybody value here? Okay, what did you perceive was done? And so whatever one individual, let's say individual A is criticizing or judging the other person for verbally criticizing them. Okay. So what you do with that person over there is you say, so where have you verbally criticized other people? And you balance that one out, and you do it for the other person. Then you go to the next column in the DeMartini method, is go, how have you benefited from the moment that you perceive this individual to have verbally criticized you? And you're not looking for forced positivity. You're not looking for forced fake gratitude. You're looking to account, like forensic accounting. Go back. You got to find logical cause and effect benefits that you can say with certainty that have resulted, like primary, secondary, tertiary benefits that you can say, yep, I did receive them from the precise moment all the way up into the present moment. And then you'll start to say, wow, I didn't see the other side of the story. And then there's another question where you say, if the individual had not done what you perceived them to do, what would have been the downfalls? What have been the disadvantages? And so you do all this sort of mental gymnastics to equalize out your perception, and then you have appreciation for this person. Appreciation is not liking the person, but it's certainly not disliking them. I think people have got this idea that, we say, oh, I really appreciate that. There's a kind of you perceive more positives, more advantages, but true appreciation is along the lines of objectivity and rising above the polarities of good and evil or positive and negative, and having a synthesized appreciation for what is like a full picture. You can say, all right, yet they still pissed me off, but when I stack up all the benefits, you can say, actually, I don't want that moment to change. Leave it as it is. Thank you. And you can move on. You can let that individual stop taking up real estate in your mind. Like time and space, like people lose sleep over some people because it just ruminates year after year. But if you can equilibrate it, you'll let the emotion go. And you're not going to let it go until you've owned the thing you're judging and can say thank you. What the saying is, anything you can't say thank you to is your baggage.
As we wrap up, Air Check Your Life, Sam, is built off of a principle that comes from my radio and television days, where when we got off the air, we would go back and listen to our tape of the things we did that morning on the air. And we would ask 3 questions. What did we get right today? What was okay, but if we're going to do it tomorrow, we should tweak it. And what did we do today that cost us an audience? And so I'm going to ask you those 3 questions, and I'd like you to center your answers around conflict if you're able to. So First question is, when it comes to conflict, what are we getting right?
It shows us that we're human. If there's conflict, it's showing you that you feel something and that you're at least care enough to say, there's something important here to me. There's something meaningful to me. And that starts a person down the road towards finding the meaning of their life. I really believe it. If people look at conflict and say, reflect on it, it will bring them towards the most meaningful pursuit in their life. I really believe that.
That's such a great answer. Okay. When it comes to conflict, what are we doing okay that we could do better?
Labeling people, blaming people, judging them as the problem, and not looking at ourselves and thinking, dynamic, maybe I'm playing a role in this. It's humbling, and that's probably why people don't want to do it.
When it comes to conflict, what are we getting terribly wrong?
I mean, it leads to fights, and it leads to really moving away from love, which I think is the whole point of when we have conflict. That's feedback to bring us back to love. When we admire other people and infatuate, that equally is feedback to bring us back to love for ourselves. And that's profound.
Sam Osborne is a speaker. He is, you're based in California, aren't you?
Yeah. Here in Burbank, California.
Love it. We will link to him in our show notes. Thanks everybody for being along for the ride. Thank you, Sam, for showing up on the podcast today. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.